Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shay Ali here with you on Inspired Online, and I have a little bit of a rare welcome back because I've tried not to put the same people on again, but we've got this lovely man, Hogarth Brown, Hoagie Brown. So I had him on right at the beginning of this series back in March. And Hoagie is a Vedic astrologer. So back in March, he was giving us what the energy is of astrology in the UK. So what is the UK's birth chart? What is Italy's birth chart? And a little insight into what was going on astrologically with China and the USA as well. So, I mean, that was a fascinating episode, so you can go back and watch that. But as we know, time has very much moved on in terms of world affairs. So I asked Hoagie whether he'd be willing to come back and give us a little bit of an update as to what is going on right now, what you see in the world, and well, he said yes, fortunately. So I've been delighted to have you back. And I should say, between then and now, he's also set up a fascinating YouTube channel, so you can go look him up there as well. But for now, what can you tell us today? What's going on in the world?
Well, thank you. Thanks, Shay. Thanks so much for having me back. It is
Absolutely.
a pleasure, as always. And my response to that is, what's not happened? Huh? I mean, my goodness, it has been bonkers by any standards. So us astrologers, especially Vedic astrologers, but all the astrologers have been looking at 2020, and quite a few of us have been kind of crowing from the rooftops now. We've just been going, my goodness, there is going to be so much change and tumult. So let's think. When I was last in, we were talking about the UK and all of that stuff. And one of the things that I have found interesting is when I was discussing the UK, I think I may have mentioned it at the time, but what was very interesting was the UK's, the position of Mercury. The position of Mercury. Now, I was just observing, and I've done a few YouTubes on this now, but in terms of, say we're talking about COVID, COVID. I've been referring to, I know, and then there's more, and then there's more. But I've been referring to COVID in my YouTube videos as the Gemini disease. Now, why? Why do I say that? And it's because planet Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Now, Gemini is about the hands, it's about the arms, and it's about the chest, but it's particularly about the upper lungs. And it's about communication. And it's about communication. So we can see from that it is very much to do with Gemini, because Gemini also rules travel, movement, socializing, how we exchange information. What's it all been about? Washing our hands, not getting too close to people. But then on top of that as well, planet Mercury rules the sign of Virgo, and Virgo is the sign of health. So it's the sign of health, it is the sign of obstacles, difficulties, challenges, accidents, emergencies. So you can see just with that one planet, so much of what's been going on. But what I've done since then, I've actually looked at different countries, and I've looked at how their Mercury has fared. And what I've found is the countries that have the highest death toll, their Mercury is afflicted in some way. So I found that the Mercury in Italy was very badly affected. Likewise for Spain, and likewise for the US and the UK. However, the countries who had a very good Mercury, like Germany, for example, had very low numbers relative to everyone else in Europe, and their Mercury is excellent. And it's similar for other countries with lower numbers than ours. So I found that fascinating. So I just thought I would share that insight. And I suppose, I mean, what is there stuff that you want to know in terms of what's coming up, or just more information on what's happened so far?
Well, a bit of both. Well, what's coming up? When can we go for a meal again? Well, actually, that's not the best question, is it? Because the government have told us that. When can we get
It's
to
a
level
question
one
for
on that scale?
absolutely.
When
It's
can
the
we be like
question
New
for
Zealand and
everyone.
be like, yeah, it's gone?
Well,
I'm a bit fed
I
up with
mean,
it, to be honest. Come on, God,
oh,
sort it
me
out.
too. Me too. I mean, it's just I don't know about everyone else. I mean, today I feel I feel a little bit better about it, but I've got so bored of my own cooking. Today, you know, I really have. I mean, today I kind of pushed the boat out. I did some pork belly with some sweet potato and some lovely stuff, and it was delicious. But I'm
Oh, wow,
bored
a
of it.
cook.
Oh yes, I like to cook as well. But no, you're absolutely right. When can we get back to restaurants? Because look, we know there's been a lot of heartache. There's been a lot of tragedy. A lot has happened. We know this. And again, you know, because of elements within the UK's chart, we now have the highest death toll in Europe rather than one of the lowest. However, life goes on, and the weather's been amazing. Obviously, June has been a little bit wetter, but we've had 2 astonishing months of amazing weather where nature has just been so wonderful, and we want to be outdoors. We want to be enjoying these things. Now, planet Venus rules things like restaurants and hospitality. Now, at the moment, Venus
They've really
is
suffered,
retrograde.
though. Massively.
Basically, Venus has been in lockdown since lockdown started. Like the Venusian kind of careers and occupations have just been under the cosh. So if you think that's the acting world, theaters, it has been hospitality. So all things like drinks, food, luxuries, flights, holidays, they're all Venusian. And Venus is currently retrograde at the moment. She goes direct on the 25th of June. So this kind of sort of times in with where the restaurants are. So I think towards end of June, but I think in my original video, I said on the 15th of July, when the sun breaks something called the Kala Sarpa Yoga, I think that's going to help everything else. But I will definitely say, I would definitely say by August we should be good, because there's also there's the practicalities. A lot of people have work in hospitality. Think of all the conferences that can't happen. Think of all of the vacations people can't go on. So as the sun gets stronger, but I would say definitely by mid-July we should be there, but hopefully sooner, sort of end of June, which seems to sort of fit. I think the government said 5th of July, didn't they? So
well, recently they've said 22nd of June for pubs, bars and restaurants. Was the latest. That's what they were considering. Oh, you're happy about that?
That is amazing. Well, if that happens, that will be just, it will just be 3 days before Venus goes direct. But the important thing is that Venus was invisible. She is still technically invisible. So what does that mean? So when a planet goes invisible, it means it's very close to the rays of the sun. Because the sun is so bright, it kind of bleaches that planet out. So what that planet's good for, so like Venus is love, hospitality, you know, friendship, you know, all those kind of things, it kind of just weakens it a bit. That's also part of why we've been having a lot of protests and riots and stuff like that. However, Venus should become visible from tomorrow. So I find it quite interesting, because I didn't know about that timeline where they were talking about the 22nd of January, and she starts going direct on the 25th. So it seems to be very much in correlation with that planet. So yeah, it looks like we'll be able to eat out again soon.
Good stuff.
Go for a coffee.
So you mentioned the protest. Let's talk about that. What's going on astrologically with that? Because you know, obviously it's such an important cause that people are protesting about. It's, you know, we've got the government going, please don't go out and protest because the virus is still amongst us, and you know, you're causing a danger. And I'm sure, well, I don't know what they're doing in America about that sort of protest warning, but certainly we have that in the UK, and I'm sure they probably had it in the States as well. So there seems to be a real conflict with, you know, people's right to have this freedom of speech versus, you know, well, keeping them healthy. And
yes, absolutely. It's such a challenge. So of course, as we know, just in case any of our viewers have maybe just been either abroad or in a deep hole somewhere, of course we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, which has gone globally around the world and fought for good cause, because what we saw was absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah,
just seeing someone, being extinguished, shall we say, live on camera. So, of course, that has now gone around the world. Now, why? What's going on? Now, at the moment, so I'm just looking at my transits. So I've got my software up and I'm looking at the current transits. But part of where that began was when planet Mars, which is the planet of war, of action, of rebellion, particularly of the youth as well, particularly people sort of kind of 25 and under, Mars, they're very much under that influence of that Martian energy. And so I think it was just a few days ago, if I just go to my current transits, I think it only just came out of Aquarius. Let me just do it daily. I'll go to my daily one and let me just see where Mars, so Mars, let's see here, 7th of the 6th, 20, so Mars will be going into Pisces quite soon, but in the moment he's in the sign of Aquarius. So what does that mean? Aquarius is the sign of the people, of the masses. It's the collective. It's to do with things like things that have a very wide range. So it's to do with things like the internet can be to do with the sign of Aquarius, or the 11th house, which is relative. Social media campaigns, Facebook groups where people talk about activism and stuff like that. So we have the Mars, the planet of passion, the red planet. I'm wearing red today because it's Tuesday, and Tuesday is the day that belongs to Mars.
Okay.
So, awesome. You know, I wanted to be in sync.
I've gone sparkle because we're talking about the stars.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. It all complements.
Absolutely.
So yes, so Mars is in Aquarius, stirring all of that stuff up, that heat, that passion. So imagine we have the passionate planet of war in the people, and in the energy of the people, while the planet of peace, Venus, is currently retrograde and invisible. So you can see how those two come together. Venus is also retrograde in her own sign of Taurus, because she rules over Taurus and Libra. And the sign Taurus is relative to the 2nd house. So Taurus and the 2nd house are all about values, what we believe in, what we want to stand up for, how we get our needs met, how we nourish ourselves, our day jobs, for example. I mean, Trump was talking about, you know, how Mr. Floyd would be very pleased that that the unemployment has gone down a little bit in the USA, but I think it's still around about.
Bizarre comment to make.
It was utterly bizarre.
I don't really know what to say about that.
I know what
has he become a medium?
Exactly. I mean, it's gone from sort of like comic to outrageous to just now it's just absolutely astonishing. It's almost reached the point where I think people almost rendered speechless. The 2nd house is also to do with speech, by the way. So I think clearly, you know, Trump is having a major retrograde in that part, because he's the stuff that's coming out of his mouth is just very
it's fascinating.
It is. But also as well, to give those dynamics, what's happening, we can always look at the opposite sign, because we just had on the 5th of this month, 5th of June, we just had a lunar eclipse.
Okay.
Now, a lunar eclipse deals mainly with the mind and with the emotions. So what it was just when one of the nodes of the moon came close to the moon, we had like, I think they call it a pre-umbral eclipse. So it's quite wide. It wasn't very, very strong, but it was quite emotional. And it happened in a sign of sidereal Scorpio, because remember, I'm a sidereal astrologer. Okay. And opposite Scorpio is Taurus. So some people say when that eclipse happened, it was like picking off like a little bit of a scab and exposing that to the air. And that made us reassess our values in the sign opposite, because Scorpio is all about death and rebirth and transformation. So what are people asking for? They're asking for change. They want a change in the value system globally around the world. So that really kind of lets people know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Any more questions about what's coming ahead?
What do you see that change as being? Because, you know, people want change and stuff, but how is that going to look? You know, I guess, and maybe I haven't looked at the specifics enough. And, you know, obviously we don't want killings, we don't want police brutality or any of that. But what is that change, and how will we know that we've got it?
Because I mean, you're a lady of the law. You're a very successful lawyer, so you understand that these processes, it can take time. I mean, in the UK, I suppose we're a little bit different, because from what now, please correct me here, because you are the lawyer and I am not.
But sorry, I'm off duty at the moment, law-wise.
Well, I was thinking, like, from what I understand, with our unwritten British constitution, so much of the law is based on precedent, isn't it? Precedent. What has happened before. So, I mean, in regards to the UK, I suppose that gives us more adaptability and an ability to change, because we don't necessarily have these hard, fast and set kind of rules. It's almost law by consensus. I know it's not quite like that, but when enough people agree that this is what the law is, it is so, rather than this kind of written constitution and all this kind of stuff like that in America, which is a lot more rigid. They do want legal reforms, clearly. So essentially, people are asking for a change of value structure in those things that they feel are oppressing them in some way. So if Scorpio can be like the oppressive side, because Scorpio is a darker energy overall, but it's very transformative. But Scorpio is where those kind of icky conversations live, where those more challenging aspects are. And then Taurus being the opposite of that. Taurus says, what is my value? What am I prepared to stand up for? What am I prepared not to put up with any longer? Which is why, for example, say like very fortunate people like yourselves who have like a very strong moon in Taurus. So this is a Rahini lady, everyone.
If we know what that is. She was apparently the favorite wife of the person that rules the gods. Right, of the moon, right, there we go.
Well remembered. Well, that's excellent. Yes, Rahini, if we think of the star clusters, which are known as the moon, and they're called nakshatras, and there is a nakshatra which is called Rahini, and that is where the moon likes to be. So when the moon is in Rahini, what it means is it gives us an overall self-esteem. It gives us an overall sense of self-worth. It's not arrogant. It's not an arrogant expression. It's a sense of, I know my value, so I don't need to do that, but I think I will do that. Do you see? And it just comes naturally to Rahini people. Rahini people are the least likely to, because Scorpio can also be the sign of self-undoing. Wow. So when the moon is in Rahini, when the moon is in Rahini, a person will, irrespective of their life, will have this sense of personal value of what they're prepared to do and what they're not prepared to do. So Scorpio is just the opposite of that. Scorpio is more insecure. It's where the moon is debilitated. It's more vulnerable there. But at the same time, there can be that risk of tripping over yourself in Scorpio. It just happens less likely to happen in Taurus, Rahini. So there we are.
Yeah, indeed. So let's talk about, you spoke a little bit about law. Let's take a different twist on the law. I read this funny news article recently. It was like one of those editorial comments. And it's like, how have we come to be in a country where car dealerships are allowed to be open? So you're allowed to buy a new car, but if you're not a cohabiting couple, you can't sleep with your partner.
I know. Yeah.
Or, you know, if you're single and you decide, you know, hey, I'd spend 2 months at least.
I know. It's remarkable. And
so what are we doing?
Well, in terms of information, but possibly not solace, I did a YouTube special on the UK government and examining that Mercury and why we just cannot seem to get our ducks in a row or our trousers on the right way. And one of the words that I used to describe the British government, so when we're talking about in mundane astrology, when we're looking at things like in countries and stuff, and the word I used, which is still even more relevant now, is discombobulated. The government is discombobulated. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I'm familiar with both the word and unfortunately I agree with you. It's like,
you see what I mean? It's apples and pears and tangerines and bananas all being mixed together. And one thing where I do think where the government does deserve praise is, of course, with the furlough scheme. Yes. And those various different measures, but really and truly, we can really lay the praise at the door of, say, Rishi Sunak, because the Chancellor is essentially a separate entity unto himself. He consults with the Prime Minister, but ultimately it's up to him and his team to come up with the policies. So we can see that there's some intelligence there. And in fact, I should probably look at his chart. It wouldn't surprise me if Mercury was exalted or some sensible planet was in good dignity, shall we say.
Apparently he was favourite to take over. That was a few weeks ago. Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Oh, what is me? It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me because there is so much surprising that has happened and is yet to happen. It's very much the energies of this year are expect the unexpected. So you never know. You never know. But what is part of that discombobulation? Well, in the UK chart, Mercury sits in the sign of Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. And I say to people, planet Mercury is like the Intel processor in your computer. And that's what the fan does all the time. It's blowing, isn't it? And it's keeping that chip nice and cool. Yeah. So Mercury does very well in earth signs and air signs because there's a coolness to them. Right. He can chill out, he can do his thing. So when he's in Libra, he does well in his own sign, Gemini. And I'm trying to think of the other air sign, which has got, Aquarius. And Taurus, that would be Capricorn, and that would be Virgo. He loves doing well in those signs. Okay. Water signs, he's not so great, because what happens if you pour water on a microchip? It could short circuit. Yeah. Yeah. But when Mercury is in a fire signs are hot. They speed things up. So basically what happens, if we imagine Mercury as a microchip, when he's in a sign like Sagittarius or Aries or Leo, but in Sagittarius in particular, he overheats. And that's where we have our Mercury in the UK chart. And not only that, he's being aspected by his enemy Jupiter, and he's being aspected by Mars, a really hot planet who really doesn't like Mercury at all, by his. Well, what that does is, when it comes to strategy, because Mercury is the planet of strategy, how we can organize things in our minds, they call him the accountant of, they call him the accountant of the zodiac. He processes, he works things out. He decides what strategy we're going to do going forward.
Right.
What has been the main criticism for the government? Everyone's like, where's the strategy?
Well, I think it's a bunch of civil servants that have to write legislation that's not gone through Parliament. This is just my view, and it's led to some pretty silly laws, actually. You know. Yeah.
There's a lot of silliness at the moment, and it's, for me, it's started to become Python-esque quite a little while ago, but now I really do feel it really is quite Monty Python at the moment, and they're going to have to retract things.
Well, yes, I'd like to drive to get my eyes checked, please.
Exactly. Or maybe even fly plane, perhaps, you know.
Sure, I don't fly planes, but that would make total sense.
Under the circumstances, I mean, we have seen some bizarre things, and it was all on the cards. The astrologers were saying this is going to be like a year like no other.
Right about that.
Yes, we do have more tumult, shall we say, on the way with the next eclipses. I wish I could be.
Oh dear.
Yes, I mean, things will settle down. Things will get better.
All right,
a lot of us astrologers, especially the Vedic astrologers, believe things will settle down come September.
Okay.
Ideally, because the nodes of the moon that have helped cause all of this havoc are changing signs. They're moving. In September, they're moving. So some of this intensity should drop. In fact, it has dropped a little bit, actually, because the north node of the moon has just gone into a star system called Mrigashira, which is to do with the deer, which is a little bit less aggressive, and it's less bonkers, basically, than what we've been having. But by September, it should calm down a bit more. However, there are spanners in the works, shall we say.
Oh dear. So we're going to be seeing sensible decisions out of this government or not?
We'll see. I mean, almost with this government, it's kind of, we're like a ship on the waves being buffeted by the weather, and there's not really anyone at the helm to hold that, to hold the course. No. Because, of course, I mean, Boris seems to be either doing it with his feet or just getting someone else to kind of get stuck in. It's been very hands-off. And I did think it was very interesting because you did mention Boris earlier. And
well, you read my post, in fact, yesterday. Or Sunday, I think I posted it. And I was like, just getting the vibe that this guy, for whatever reason, has just lost interest in doing the job. And I do believe the job was his dream. And he got there and he thought, I don't want my dream anymore. I'm not going to swear, but, probably goes to bed at night thinking, I wish I wasn't dealing with this. Whereas we've got Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand going, she did a little happy dance, 2 days ago because they've cleared. That was like the quote from her from New Zealand. So, what is going on with him? Do we think that will he keep the top job?
Oh, right. Okay. So, folks, if you're watching, this is juicy stuff here. This is juicy stuff. So, Shay's asked me a cracker. You really have, because there's something funny that happens. So, just before I talk about Boris, what I'll talk about is prime ministers or kings or queens. So, in our modern context, because we have a constitutional monarchy and royalty no longer has absolute power, that kind of power has now been conferred upon the prime minister. Be they male or female, like they are sort of become like the anointed king. Not ideal, because of course they're just ordinary people, just like everyone else, and they're fallible. However, the leader of a nation, their astrological chart, their personal astrological chart, blends with their nation and affects the destiny of the nation.
It's like a relationship reading, is it?
Yes, it's very much like that. And this is why, for example, some astrologers, if they're trying to predict who is going to be the next leader in a democratic country and they're in a race with each other, what they do is they compare both of the candidates' charts and they see which chart best fits the chart of the nation.
Oh, wow.
And that's how you can find out who's going to be the winner. And it works very well. So going back to Boris,
I'm going to ask you for an American prediction. Because our election's coming up pretty soon.
Oh, indeed, yes. And we can definitely talk about that, because America's stuff it's really off the scale. Okay. The stuff that is happening there is really off the scale. So there's a bit about that. I mean, that could just be a whole discussion in of itself.
All right, well, let's get back to Britain for now, and then we'll maybe come to America.
Oh, indeed. So with the UK, what people don't know is that we are still living out part of the karma that was instigated by the birth chart of David Cameron.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I remember correctly, David Cameron, I think he's got his sun, which represents the soul, in his 12th house. And the 12th house represents foreign things, foreigners, things far abroad. It could represent the European Union, for example. But the 12th house is also a house of losses, and expenses, losses and expenses. Now, this can also be, there's good sides to the 12th house as well. It can mean long distance travel when we go on holiday, how we escape going to the movies, any way we kind of escape this world is very 12th house, for good or bad. But when David Cameron basically did set up the referendum, it triggered that sun in the 12th house.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what's interesting is that planets have certain lengths of time of spheres of influence, and the time of the sun is 7 years. So we're kind of about halfway through.
Yeah.
You think about it, or maybe just over halfway through in terms of the European Union saga. So that gives you an insight. So now we're with Boris. His chart is going to trigger certain things, but in terms of him staying in the job, I am not sure. I'm not sure he will stay in the job, because I think that impulse that you had, Shay, I think you really hit the nail on the head. Because if we look at him, like, first of all, irrespective of our opinions of Boris Johnson, he's had a lot on his plate. So let's just do an overview. Before he became prime minister, or during that time, he was just finishing. There was he was finishing up on his divorce. There was all the hoo-ha and all the drama with Carrie Simmons, where the police were called round. Remember that? There was all that. Then they got engaged. Then she's got pregnant. Then they've got engaged. He's then had Brexit drama to deal with. All of that. There's been a change in the leader of the opposition. Someone who is much more difficult to deal with. Like you said, Sir Keir Starmer is making mincemeat out of Boris.
Well, he's a QC. You wouldn't want to face a QC on the best of days. I mean, absolutely. And he knows how to do it.
Absolutely. And he's just doing it in this calm, dry, very efficient way. And you can just see Boris almost sweating with anguish, because he's just being turned like a kebab. He's been raked over the coals. So like you said, he's only done it a couple of times, because I think it's traumatic for him, frankly.
Yeah,
and then
it's unusual. I mean, we're in June, and I know he's been ill and he's a new father and stuff, but we're in June, and for a prime minister to have done PMQs twice since Keir Starmer took over, I believe he took over when, after the election, so January, February?
In fact, I think it was later, wasn't it, when he was named officially? I think, wasn't it April?
Oh, okay.
I think it was April when because he was the front runner, and everyone knew that he would win. And I would say that's probably one of the most sensible moves Labour has actually made.
I agree with you.
You know,
I
mean, without getting too much into it, but at least they've selected someone who is sharp, like you said,
very sharp.
As a QC, you know that game. You know how to prepare. You know how to prepare your arguments and whatever it is that you have to say. And one also goes into the court, I imagine, in anticipation of the response that one is likely to get from the other party.
You have to. That training makes you meticulous.
Absolutely. So, of course, Keir Starmer is just doing this stuff backwards. And he was probably, he's probably doing the Guardian crossword just before he comes into PMQs. And poor Boris is standing there. Well, maybe not poor Boris, but Boris is standing there. And Keir's got an answer for everything.
Yeah, he does.
And he's just, to me, it's almost like the effect of like a melting ice cream or ice lolly. Do you know what I mean? It's just going like, whoa, like that. Even the hair looks floppier in the presence.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, I don't think he looks very well. I was remembering, obviously we all saw that Boris on a zip wire back when he was London mayor and got stuck waving his Union Jacks and things. And he looked a lot more kind of jovial and happy then. Now he doesn't look very well.
No, he doesn't look very well. And of course the COVID wouldn't have helped.
No,
and I did do a YouTube on Boris, because it was very touch and go. I looked at his chart and there was one planet that saved Boris. One.
Okay.
And that was planet Jupiter.
Yeah.
All of the other planets astrologically had it in for him. So when I was looking at his chart, I mean, it could have been the chart of Julius Caesar. I mean, like the Ides of June, the amount of planets that had it in for him astrologically.
And he still?
Well, the danger has passed now, in the sense of basically Jupiter got him through it. How? While all of this stuff was going on, planet Jupiter, through an aspect, which is sort of like a drishti, a look at Boris's first house, which is the body. And it's your physical self.
Yeah.
And Jupiter is a very jovial planet. It's known as the Great Benefic. It's not perfect. And Boris Johnson as well is a very jovial character. The trouble with jovial characters,
yes, I would imagine. Not lately.
Exactly, not lately, but they're very ebullient. I find him very Jupiterian. Trouble with too much Jupiter is that Jupiter can overpromise, and not always fully deliver. And indeed, throwing an aspect to his first house, which basically saved him. Even though Jupiter was very weak, because Jupiter is now in sidereal Capricorn, which is the debilitation point of Jupiter, but it was strong enough, just strong enough to basically save him. If he had got COVID at any other time of the year, he wouldn't have made it. Yeah. And he said that as much, didn't he? So he said at some point it was 50-50. Yeah. So when we look at Boris on the whole, and going back to what you said about, it's like he's attained the prize, but it's the poison chalice. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of like gone on this. He's like Odysseus in a way. He's gone on this incredible journey of twists and turns and ups and downs and all sorts of subterfuge and scheming and every trick in the book that Boris has had to pull out to be prime minister. And he finally gets there. And then what happens? He gets COVID.
Disaster.
He almost dies. He gets an opposition that's suddenly a lot stronger, and is able to kind of dissect him. And I don't think he's fully recovered. I think you're absolutely right.
It doesn't look well.
I look at him and I see a man that looks exhausted and disillusioned. I'm sure he goes to bed at night and just thinking, 5 more years of this, really? So my answer is I don't know how it's going to happen, but I can't see Boris sticking at this for 5 years. I think it would finish him, to be honest.
Yeah, my guess was a year.
I think you might be right.
And don't quote me on that. Well, obviously this is going out to the public, so they might. But this is based on no legal knowledge. This is like pure intuition.
Gut.
Yeah, that's all it is, and I could be wrong, I know, but I just don't see it.
I think you're onto something, and there are more surprises coming up. So on the 21st of June, we have another eclipse, but this is a solar one, and this one is a biggie. This one astrologically is a whopper. Why? It's because it's to do with the north node of the moon, which is the head of the dragon, and the south node of the moon, and they represent the coordinates, the points at which the ecliptic of the Earth intersects with the ecliptic of the moon going around the Earth, and these 2 points, those are the eclipses. And the closer that the moon or the sun is to that eclipse point, the more powerful it is. So what can cause an eclipse is when they're about 15 degrees apart. Any wider than that, it doesn't really touch. But 15 degrees or closer strengthens the eclipse.
Wow,
so this solar eclipse is happening, if I remember correctly, it is, if I just fast forward, let me just use my software, and I will fast forward. Yes. So this eclipse is happening within 1 degree of the North Node in sidereal Gemini.
Okay.
That's pretty much exact. So that's a very, very powerful eclipse.
Okay. And you said 21st of June. So what can
21st of June.
What can we expect?
Well, we can expect lots of things. So I say to people, people panties, folks, because this is going to be a very spinny one. Now, this is probably
don't know if I can take any more.
I know, because we're all exhausted. But look, before, let's just think. Let's think of the positives. We'll be able to eat at restaurants quite soon. There'll be that stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully, COVID won't come back because of the
summer holidays. Can we have a summer holiday?
Do you know what? I think so. At the moment, because of the discombobulation of the government, we've seen recently, of course, that they've just done this policy of having to quarantine for 2 weeks after coming back from holiday. Now, as we know, this is the equivalent of slamming the door long after the horses have bolted, and they're basically grazing on the Alps now. I mean, that's how far.
I agree. They should have quarantined people coming in from China in January.
So while they may be crazy, like back when we got the information, that's what New Zealand. I mean, you spoke of Jacinda Ardern. She's a very good example of a powerful, intelligent leader. My goodness.
Yeah, she's amazing.
New Zealand must just be clapping their hands with joy because she's so bright, so sensible. Their lockdown is over. I think they only had 165 people die in the whole country. I know they're
I think
far
it was
away.
Less, actually. But
was it even less?
I don't know the exact number, but I think it was less. And they have declared New Zealand COVID-free.
Wow.
No infections for 17 days.
See, incredible. So look at that. That shows you what great leadership can do.
Yeah.
I mean, and she is an example to the whole world, and I'm sure as well, because, you know, as we're talking about things like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that as well, but let's also discuss too how women are treated when in positions of power and in careers and stuff, because really this should be shouted around the whole wide world. I'm sure it has been, but I think there's overlooked about Jacinda, primarily because she is a woman. We're talking so much about Trump. We should be talking more about her, because that is an astonishing feat to be declared COVID-free, especially from us at Britain, where we're now over 45,000 people have gone. It's just, it's absolutely tragic, as you said. But going back to the eclipses, so on the 21st of June, on the solstice, which makes it even more powerful.
Oh, yes, I forgot about
it's
that.
on the solstice, yeah. So this eclipse is happening on the summer solstice, and it is also happening in the plane of the galaxy. Because the plane of the galaxy is around about 6 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini. It's on that axis. And the sun is going to be at pretty much, it's at 5 degrees 56 minutes. So it's basically bang on. See? The center of why is that significant? Because there is a big black hole there. And I think we've got a massive kind of star that's there as well. But it's known as where like God particles come out. This is where radiation and all of that stuff that physics scientists could talk about endlessly, a lot comes out that way. That's why, for example, when the nodes of the moon are in Gemini and Sagittarius, as they still are now, that's when you get things like global pandemics or September the 11th, stuff like that. So the sun is coming there. And it's going to be conjunct a star called Betelgeuse.
I love it. Get that movie out tonight.
I know, get the movie out. Can you believe it? I mean, I just thought Betelgeuse was just a made-up thing once upon a time. No, this is a star. The star Betelgeuse is a bit, as you can imagine, it's a bit of a naughty star. It's a bit of a treacherous star. It gives blessings, but it also gives challenges as well.
Okay. And this is for the whole world, or is this UK only?
It will affect the whole world. The solar eclipses, I mean, all the eclipses affect the whole world, but this one in particular. So like if we were to rewind 6 months, because the solar eclipses happen about 6 months apart, we had a big solar eclipse on Christmas Day in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Now,
okay.
Yeah, we did. So then you can see what's coming up in the next 6 months. Now, according to ancient Babylonian astrology, at times plague. Can you believe it? So the prediction at the time, and that's what's happened, hasn't it? We've had a global plague, a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So with this resolved, yeah, it has to be a trine is very easy. A square means something resolved, and he is conjunct a star that is called sheet. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you say that word quickly, that's how astrologers remember that star. Just say sheets very quickly, and then Mars is conjunct that star and square this eclipse. So that means there's going to be a lot of energy. How it will transpire, I mean, we'll never know. It could be a case of maybe there are more rallies and stuff that then lead to a positive change. Because it could also be positive as well.
Oh, well, let's hope so.
Let's hope so. It's just eclipses, they're just very unpredictable. But, you know, there could be issues with weather. You know, there could be issues. Some people say there might be floods in Europe, you know, because Mars is about to go into Pisces, which is a water sign. Maybe things like earthquakes are even possible as well. But then the way I see it is that this is kind of revolution and evolution working together at once. I
Mm.
think what we're going to see, this is just going to be the next wave of change, because basically people are saying we've had enough. Look, there's really not much worse than the coronavirus, basically. So we know that we can get through anything. So I just think we're going to see weather changes, but I think we're going to see even more of a push in society to energize and change things permanently. So I don't think there's going to be any going back. So there will be some stuff that happens that's a bit rubbish, but then there'll be stuff that happens as well where we can be like, wow, that was real progress. So yes, onwards and upwards. We just have to embrace it. We just have to ride the rough with the smooth.
Now, when you were with us before, you gave us a predicted end date of 31st of July. For this. So 1, does that prediction still stand? And 2, do you think a second wave is likely?
Oh, yes. Oh, good questions. I think it still stands in the sense of, I think it still does stand actually, because when we look at the trajectory, things have started to ease. And I said it would be by the end of July, didn't I? Something like that.
Yeah.
That's when most things will be sorted. So if we look at the current situation now, we see with our government, there's still hesitation, isn't there? Backwards and forwards. The schools were supposed to be up. Now they're not up. And now we're going to have to delay. And now maybe they're saying September. So you can see it's gone forwards and it's gone backwards a little bit. But I really do feel by the end of July / early August, most of this stuff, I would imagine a good 95% of this stuff will be sorted by that point. If it's not, we may as well just completely give up, because we've had more than enough time, haven't we, to adjust. Other countries with Mercury that is stronger in their charts have done better, of course. But I think even the UK, even with the kind of discombobulation that we've been enjoying, it wouldn't be completely normal in the sense of we will have, when we go out for dinner, for example, say we were meeting up for a coffee, which would be lovely.
Indeed.
We should do that again soon, actually.
Yeah, we will.
We would be on our table, and then there would be, thank you. And then there would be, meters between us and the next person. Now, in Europe, currently that distance, the social distancing, is only 1 meter. And businesses and advisors to the government are saying we probably should adopt the European method, because look, if we're wearing face masks outside and we're wearing our gloves and we're doing that stuff, particularly if we're eating outside, it can be a meter apart, because businesses need to be viable. They need to be viable. Two meters apart, I think, is just a little bit too far.
Well, I think they've said it's the difference between getting 30% of people back to work and 70%, or it's in revenues, actually, I think a 30% recovery versus a 70%. So it's huge.
Wow. I mean, that is astonishing. I didn't know it was quite that much. So, I mean, on an economic front, I mean, what I would say is this. I think the government just need to chill out and just be like, it's okay to follow best practice of other countries. No one's going to complain if it's reduced to a meter apart. That's kind of really what's happening anyway. If you just look around you, you know, most people are keeping a meter or so apart.
That's the World Health Organization guidance as well, I should add. Their guidance is a meter.
Well, there we are. So the question is, why as a nation are we not adopting that? We're trying, on one level, the government's saying, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because on one level, the government's saying, we want to get the economy back up and running. We want to get schools back. So they don't take on the WHO's advice and reduce it to 1 meter, which would help businesses have like a 70% recovery. And then just at the time when Europe is starting to open its airways and its holiday regions, we decide to slap a 2-week quarantine. It doesn't make any sense. So if we just scrapped those two things, the aeroplane thing, because at the end of the day, who wants to come? And B, our numbers are lower than ours. So really, we should be kind of creating a flight bridge so that we can go on holiday, so that people will even accept us. Because I'm planning to go to Portugal this year, and
fingers
I really
crossed.
want it to happen.
I shouldn't be advertising them, but I looked this up last night. EasyJet flights to most places in Europe, £38 return in August. I could not believe it.
Wow! Oh, that's awesome. That's some juicy bargains. I'm definitely, I'm going to do a bit of short haul, and I'm thinking possibly maybe even living in Portugal one day. Who knows? Because there's so much craziness going on. But
they've done quite well out of this as well.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. But yeah, so anyway. I hope that was a good overview. So we do have some more cray coming up, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. We will be able to go to restaurants, and if all else fails, staycation. I said to people that the buzzword of 2020 will be staycation, and I think that's how it's going to be.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I mean, obviously we've gone well over the half an hour that you usually do.
Sorry.
But no, I think it's been absolutely fascinating. Before you go, actually, I'll just see if there's any questions that have come up on our live feed. And so that you can address them now. Having said that, that's not working, so.
Not to worry.
Oh, well,
I just wanted to say as well, if anyone would like a consultation or anything like that, then am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, I was going to say, how can people get in touch with you? They're more than happy to have you say so. And also, as I said, you should check out your YouTube channel as well. So give us some details. How can we watch this?
Okay, so with my YouTube, so it's Hogarth's Global Astrology, or you can just type in Hogarth Brown and you see all my videos there. I do some on the nation. I've done a video on Kim Jong-un. I've done one on the power relationship between Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson.
Sounds fascinating.
Watch that out. It's juicy. And other stuff. And then if people want to book a consultation with me, they can go to the archetypalblueprint.com. I think you've done it in the details before on a previous thing.
Well, and I'll tag it again. So
brilliant. And there we go.
Well, thank you, Hoagie. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to going for a meal soon.
Yes, a meal, a wonderful meal. Thank you.
Lots of love.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.